So the offensive stuff, not inherently opposed to it, but there was a lot of it.
There we go.
Somebody for being offended.
That's right.
Turf stuff. Man, it seems to me like there were two big biases.
Welcome, Earthlings, so-called Earthlings, possible Earthlings, Earthling people. I'm on Earth with you right now, so we're all in it together. All right, so have 4 topics that could stretch out quite a long time, right? So I'm going to keep them quick because, we'll just return to topics. I'm sure you have lots of questions and we'll just answer those questions and whatnot. And I'm going to take suggestions from the Discord. So people have posted some things there. I'll try to pay more attention with that in mind. I mean, I've been reading links when they put them over there, but I thought this is part of the interactivity. That's a good way to put up a topic. One thing we're going to go through too is Kenneth Katona telling, I don't know what the problem is. Evidently, he's all against me now. And, I watched one of his videos. He says, well, don't you watch my video and we'll start from there. Hey, I made a video. So I watched your video and it seemed like you're changing the topic to other things about it's like, how about you? How about you answer to what I said? And so there's another video after that I haven't watched. We'll watch that together to end here. So another thing I was realizing, if people submit stuff and I cold watch it, then it isn't cold watching because you guys already vetted it. So possibly depending on whether it seems to be sincere as these do. In other words, no promises, but it seemed like a good idea. Now this over here is La Palma. It's still just going like crazy, and that's all glowing and still shooting lava way up into the air. So first things first. Okay. First things first is Joe Manchin. Now it's been really bugging me. Joe Manchin's been basically stalling the bills, the 1/2 bills, infrastructure, continuation, various the things that have been proposed and were supported by Biden. People are doing a little bit of what they always do. Some people in some parts of the media, blame the progressives for not going along. But it's Manchin and Sinema. Sinema, who's become like a conservative when she used to be a green, and is sort of like it's all performative. Joe Manchin has at least been consistent in this. Now, what's been bugging me is they say the moderates, and they mean Manchin. He's not a moderate. He's a conservative. There's been conservatives in the Democratic Party all along. Remember, it used to be the anti-slavery people. It's always had conservatives in it. Well-loved Democrats like JFK, plenty conservative in most, in the traditional international sense of what political philosophy words mean. He's conservative. And what does he say? He's called himself a moderate conservative Democrat. And he's the most conservative. And this is the problem of, in skepticism, there's an idea that you ought to have like at least 5 different stories, different narratives, different positions, right? You don't want to have one. Everybody knows what having one leads into, but the whole understand both sides. When you have 2, people think, oh, that's the both sides. And they become opposites. Communism isn't really the opposite of capitalism. There's, H.G. Wells had a social system he wanted. Which one's it the opposite? Are they all opposites of each other? If you gave two, it'd be considered opposites. It's like in Gulliver's Travels, you know, where they argue about which side to crack the poached egg on. Well, that doesn't make those two positions opposite because they both like poached eggs. But they see the differences, and it's easy for two narratives to see each other if both acknowledge that there's two narratives, that they're opposites. But, the skeptical view would, you probably should have five or so narratives. They're not opposites, they're all different. And in the understanding comes from viewing all of those things. If you were to, I forget if I mentioned this example before, but if you want to understand the American Revolution, you can't just tell George Washington's story or just Benjamin Franklin's story or ignore the stories of all the soldiers that fought in it. In the ideal sense, you tell all of those stories, right? You tell all of the stories, you listen to all of the stories, and that's where the truth would lie. Just checking my mic. So, Manchin's a conservative Democrat. The Republicans aren't even really extreme conservative. Here's a good book to understand in the best sense. If instead of understanding conservatism as reactionaryism, because it attracts reactionaries, but really this book, The Conservative Mind. The conservatives were progressives. They were not royalists. They're like, let's not kill the king and queen. Let's save our institutions. Let's still celebrate our old holidays. But let's progress, advance society. So it's not a bad thing to just be a conservative, especially if you believe in science and other things and aren't just some sort of weird reactionary about it. And he's a conservative. They could call him a conservative Democrat, and that might mean that, he's still to the left, of Pinochet, but it's just a stupid concession. I don't. He's called himself a moderate conservative. That doesn't make him a moderate. That makes him a kind of conservative. Moderate compared to what? Fine, but a conservative, and it's not the worst thing in the world. But when you just present these words without any context or definition, you're just transmitting an emotional attitude. So that's annoying. All right, now I'm going to watch something that Dynacat sent about taxing transactions. I believe it's going to be like Venmo transactions, something like this. I had heard a little bit about this.
Whether you're paying the dog walker or the hairdresser using Venmo or Cash App, soon all of these little transactions could be under the watchful eye of Uncle Sam. The feds say they want to catch tax evaders. Many of you say it's an invasion of your privacy. The owner of Dave's Barbershop and Beauty Salon upset
Big government
that the IRS will soon want its cut of tax money from their cash apps.
We should really take a look at our government.
Stylist Tina Berlin says small business and government are always in a fight.
On a $20 haircut, what is your tip? $5? And now you want to tax me on $25? What am I making in the end?
She's not alone.
I said, hey, what's going on?
Musician Josh Kerwin uses Venmo.
Well, I mean, have them pay cash if your goal is to avoid taxes.
As a virtual tip jar.
People tell me all the time, they're like, oh, I'm really glad you have Venmo because I don't have cash on me. I really wanted to tip you, and I'm glad you had something.
A gig can provide $40 in tips, putting him at that $600 limit in a month or less.
You have to audit yourself without an actual audit. It just sounds like a nightmare for anyone who's self-employed.
If their intent is to take things from the rich.
Well, if that's not taxable, and I honestly don't know if, I know busking is usually cash under the table because people choose to do that. But if they were to report it, are they supposed to pay taxes on it? either way, if they charge you a tax and you don't owe that tax, then it'll be in your balance, right? And I mean, I'm just not big on we should live in this country and have infrastructure and, taxes are automatically bad. The Constitution allows for taxation.
and give it to the poor. This is certainly not a good way of doing that.
Experts expect legal challenges.
More
Well, that
money,
might be
more
true.
money.
It is a statement from the government saying that they believe that the American people are dishonest. The only way that they can make sure that people are paying taxes is to keep tabs on every nickel and dime they spend.
Money don't talk, it swears.
Now, using Cash App for splitting meals, rent, or groceries would not be taxed. In 2023, if you receive more than $600 in income on Venmo, you're going to need one of these, a 1099K. And tax experts say the best advice is make sure you keep track of everything. Dave Elias, NBC2.
Right, and you're going to be taxed on what's taxable. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, that's great. I loved watching that, but I'm not concerned. I'm curious what Dynacat's take on that is. All right, now I forgot to start something that I think I want here. So that is where it would have been good to have it ahead of time. Also, my pen. So, all right. So what we're going to talk about here is this is just a little confusion. I decided, look, I can't try to sort the whole thing out entirely. We're trying to not dive into the depths of everything, but we're not going to avoid the depth. So I thought of a lot of ways of describing this, how people get things backwards, common confusions. But what I want to talk about is you have these terms. Oh, Jesus. Now I have to do this as well. I'm sure this is your problem with the stream. This is why I'm supposed to do this stuff ahead of time. Digital pen area is not correct. And so we will put that down to this one. And apply. Okay. There. All right. So we have this idea of the general case. Versus the special case. And on the other hand, we have the common case versus the uncommon case. And I deal with this kind of confusion a lot in my work. I think it's an everyday life thing, but people often don't think of their life in terms of the abstractions that actually apply. So I don't know, but definitely in programming we deal with things like this in general because you need to handle all cases one way or another. And the problem is that often common sense and even engineers seem to confuse that the uncommon case is special and the common one is general. But that's not true. It's not what it means. So what it actually means is basically what's going on is you have a category. Okay, so for example, the category in a computer programming, let's say it could be data coming into a data pipeline. Let's just say it's a form, because a lot of business computer stuff, you could just think of it as the same kind of paperwork that businesses always did with forms, but the form is computerized. You can, all the little items, all the little fields on the form are identified as such, and, so it can be searched on all those things, but it's basically still just like a form, a page or multi-page form, and it goes through into an inbox of a program that receives it, and then the outbox where the program's done and sends it on or puts it in a database where other work can be done. So this ends up being you have a case. There's a form and another case. And so on and so on, all of these cases. Now the form, it might usually be in English, but it can come in another language, right? Now, the uncommon case is not the special case, and I still deal with this. This is one of the worst things in engineering to hear is when you say, oh, but what if these two forms are submitted simultaneously and go to different workers? Will there be a conflict? And they're like, that usually won't happen. Don't worry about it, as if they want to just build for this common case. But you have to build for all of the cases. And one of the things is if you have a rare situation and a continual number of situations in general, then that rare situation, that means with statistics, that's guaranteed to happen. You could call it eventually, but depending on how many cases, that eventually could be every second, it could be every minute, it could be once a year, it could be once every 1,000 years. But you want your system one way or another to handle it when it comes through. So what this really means here is that these dichotomies are not similar dichotomies at all, right? So these are all the cases down here. Those are a bunch of quickly drawn arrows. And the general case is not the common case, it's all of the cases. The special case is just one case, or a subset of cases. So for example, let's say the special case here is these are in Spanish, not English, right? The general case is they could be in any language. The special case would be, oh, they're in Spanish. The special case would be, oh, they're in German. And the special case would also be the common case where they're in English, because though it's common, it's still not general. It's not all. The general case includes all of the cases. So, for example, to use in the programming, it's best to program for that special case that's going to happen rarely but for sure. And then the common case should be easier, right? But if you make assumptions that the forms will always be in one language, it's going to be more complicated when you deal with those in another language than it would be if you make the assumption they can be in any language and take advantage of the fact that maybe 99% of the time they're in a particular language. Or don't even take advantage of it at all. Just handle the general case. There will be no problem. And a common case is definitely the fact that these cases are going to follow a curve. They always follow a curve, right? So if you get cases like this and there's a random distribution, then you always get the bell curve, right? And this would be considered, any case in this area would be considered probably the common case, right? So the case that happens, most of the time. Maybe not even most of the time, maybe only 50% of the time, but there's nothing else more common, right? And the uncommon just, is something that happens less often. Over here, in this case, it's in Sanskrit. Very special, very uncommon. Common case, many. Now maybe Spanish is the common case still, and by some other, maybe because common might not be the language, it might be whether or not it's fully filled out, right? You can cut that cross section anywhere that you want. And people get very confused about this, and so that's why I'm telling you, because it seems totally like, what's the point, right? And yet you know that there is a point, because I've warned you, when you run into this problem and people thinking that the special case is rare and the general case is common, you'll know that's not really how that works. And in fact, if that's not clear to you, then don't even worry about general and special case. Just think of more material words like common and uncommon, and you won't get confused. I will summarize to say that the confusion about a special case being the uncommon case is because in human history, we deal with the common case and let the special case be in an emergency. The special case being Jesus came in the wrong language, throw it out. We won't handle it. We want to imagine that it isn't there. We're going to pick 80% of the apples that are easy to pick and the 20 that's hard to pick, or we don't know if it's good, or those trees are fire. We don't pick those, and so we ignore them. Whereas in a scientific or even just a modern context, you should handle all the cases. All the cases. And handling something as a special case is kind of a way of doing it, but usually it means filtering out and ignoring. And really what we want to do in the general case, at least on a scientific model, is handle everything. So even though Newtonian mechanics is the very commonly applicable type of mechanics rather than relativistic mechanics, it's the Newtonian mechanics that's a special case of relativistic mechanics that applies when the speed of light, when the velocity is nowhere near the speed of light. Then you have the special case, the common case. So often the special case is the common case. Why? Because of the bell curve. The common cases are just going to be a subset of all the cases. That's just how that works. I'm sure that's very important. All right, so now Kenneth Katona, he asked me to watch this video and start with this video, and as a discussion, he was already replying to my videos. So Kenneth, I expect you to do that. And also, you write down here for Piro314, who has a major issues with his microphone. Okay, I'm not going to be putting up with a lot of that. I've always never been petty with you. So you might disagree with me. You might find my ideas make me, a bad person even. But I'm not treated you petty. I'm not going to put up with much of you not returning the favor, okay, after 10 years or 8 years or whatever it is. So you've been treated fairly. We don't have to agree. We're not planning to agree with each other. I'm just listening to you. So if I do see pettiness in here and stuff, I'm not going to bother. Okay, I'm over that. All right. Now I watched this video, and we're going to watch another one of yours that I haven't watched. We're going to do a 1.25. And this one, you're just changing the subject. You're just like, oh, Piro, you brought up a subject. I have something to say on that. First of all, ignore what you said, and I'm going to start the conversation. That's not how it works, Kenneth. But we'll watch this, and maybe the second time through I'll find how you are replying to what I've said. But again, we're going to be very special about this, and I already think some of the things that you've said are out of the scope of what I find acceptable. And that's going to be the new limitation here. Those of you used to me having no boundaries and rules and still engaging as though you said something of content, well, I hope you find there's a change now and illusions exist. So, all right, here we go. Now, it's maxed out.
Make sure this is working.
Oh, it's a little quiet. It's maxed out both
Now,
on YouTube and here, so that's what it is.
Equation, but we have different factors that come into play in such a way that it shows the different qualitative stances of the subject at hand. Now, there are basically no grievances at all. It is just a presentation of circumstances that are due by cause and effect. We can see that basically the laws enacted by the government are the overshadowing changes of societal affairs and how these.
Okay, so you said, I think you said there's nothing personal. So if you're putting the little thing about my mic in your description just because you think that's a marketing technique, don't do that.
Propagate protections against groups that come out and are recognized by the government.
Groups, okay, that could be a lot of different, more than one people's.
So, plainly speaking, of course, in how the operational factors occur in such a way that there are mitigating circumstances of the reasons why there are groups forming on a opinionated and biased basis.
Okay, so we're talking about groups of opinions, meaning positions, what we would call positions. And there's mitigating factors to those positions. I'm not sure exactly what you mean about that yet.
We can see that the mandates and proposals and laws acted are an insightful way for some type of response.
Insightful. Not sure whether we're going to be insightful with the C or SIGHT.
Whether it be peaceful, protest, or hostile.
So looks like the C style. Okay.
Now, excluding the hostile aspect of it, because it's mostly a singularity operation.
A singularity operation is, I'm not clear.
And not part of any type of militia.
Oh, a single person as opposed to a militia, so the hostility isn't as important in that case, I guess.
Now, there are gangs, of course, and chapters of gangs, but they pretty much well want to be left alone and operate in a fashion that has the appearance of compliance.
So you're saying most groups want to be left alone and treated as compliant, for example, within our heterogeneous society where everybody's allowed to be different. So, the chess club, I guess, or people that think that even something political, like we should support public gardens, they aren't trying to be hostile. They just want to be left to their own opinions, but also taken seriously. Okay.
Okay. Now, with that out of the way, we can get into the gist of the discussion at hand and how.
Which, now, I took his response to be immigration oriented, but it says about social change and culture war. And so I was also saying how I always thought the culture war was bullshit, but if somebody declares you a war against you on bullshit, you're still going to have to deal with that. So I guess this is about culture war.
The fundamental qualitative stances of social change and culture war are the new norms, and how
I would say what I was saying is it's always been the norm, cultural change. When have you ever seen a 100-year period that was really exactly the same to the degree that we think of it that way, like in the so-called Middle and Dark Ages? We're projecting that out. There's a constant change.
it's been pushed towards that aspect by many years of implicational factors. And these can be seen in a way of behind the scenes or.
Well, remember, we had totally open immigration to this country for, I think, almost 100 years or around 100 years. Somebody can go ahead and put the actual number. The Chinese Exclusion Act. And we still had open, except for the racist filtering, immigration for a long time after that. So we've been restricting immigration more and more throughout the history of this country. So that's what's been pushed for.
Some type of unrecognizable institution that wants to develop a new motivational technique to be had. Now, the outcomes are not cut clear and dry yet. So it's basically a wait and see approach. Thanks for watching.
So how is this? Okay, you didn't reply to anything in my video specifically. If you did, I didn't get it in between the lines there. And you say this is the start of the conversation, that it remains to be seen. No, actually, history's already got some years behind it, Kenneth, and we have waited and seen a lot of things. We're not just starting when you were born or when you started paying attention to politics. There's already history there. We already have wait and see a lot of things. Faith, if you're talking about my settings, I just told you he's on max. Studio OBS is on max. I can't make it any louder than that. That I can take and usually watch at 1.5, so I'm going to do, as a matter of fact, we'll just take 175. If that's too fast, then we'll slow it down afterwards. So this is the one I haven't seen, Political Ideologies for Immigrants.
Okay, make sure this is worked properly.
Oh,
And the
okay.
timer is ticking.
That's way too fast. All right, so let's try 1.5. Now, again, if anybody thinks that this is a hit piece, then that's just a bunch of, he's asking me to watch. I'm asking people to reply. I don't have to, I am not being petty. I'm watching, replying to what I'm hearing.
Okay, through the mechanical aspects of getting into
Oh, Faith, I think he was talking about 2 times speed.
a country is a
Oh, Jesus, now I've missed the beginning. I don't want this.
properly.
I don't want this to be like Fantasy Island or The Love Boat where you miss the first few seconds and don't know what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to pay attention here because I haven't watched this one before.
Okay, make sure this is worked properly. And the timer is ticking. Okay, through the mechanical aspects of getting into a country is a set of criteria basis that involves in due process. Now, for one to not recognize this process is considered as an illegal. Okay. Now, to honor the system in such a way.
Okay, stop right there because, for example, this reminds me of a lot of conservatives saying that they are against illegal immigration. That's all. But then they complain about anchor babies and chain migration. Or they say the refugees are doing something illegal. No, actually, it is totally legal to come up to our borders and ask to be accepted as a refugee. Or I think in the embassy. But certainly you can come up to the border and say, hey, I seek refuge. That's legal. To strip their kids away for doing illegal immigration, that doesn't seem cool. And don't say, oh, but it's illegal. It wasn't. Anchor babies is a word for natural born citizen. Not illegal. There's a slur put on it because people don't like it, conservatives and anti-immigration people, not just conservatives, but it's legal. And it's not like this special case and uncommon case thing that I was talking about, right? Like they just map one idea to the other, like, oh, anchor babies, and therefore but it's not illegal. Chain migration, we call it family reunification, is what those of us that believe in immigration call it, and it's been legal for a long time. It's a policy of immigration. And remember, it's a policy from the point of view we want the people that want to come to America and melt into this society. And again, if we just never get new vegetables in the soup, it'll just be a broth. So this is a part of what it takes. But anyway, I'm getting off the topic that's being presented here. But yes, if you don't follow the process, it's called illegal. But maybe not as illegal as you think. Coming across the border the first time is a misdemeanor. Asking for refuge, not illegal at all.
That once you establish the basis of it, you are granted access into the country. Now, what to expect when you are indoctrinated into the system? Because there's many choices to be had at hand in such a way that there is a great disparity of choices to be made. Now, you can fall into the normal standards of living and functionality, but who is looking at the bigger picture here? And how?
Well, I'm looking at the bigger picture, but I'm getting distracted too because, Faith, I was reacting oversensitive because I want to be fair to people I disagree with, and I don't want to have to hide my real reaction. I just want it to be that I'm not petty, talking about the ideas that's fair. And so I guess the closest to a real button that trolls push is when usually, or not trolls actually, but when people try to escape conversation, like I forget his name at the moment. But anyway, people that try to pretend that I'm just a ponage artist or a debate bro, which, is obviously not what I've done. I'm sure people can sustain that as my reputation because I went no holds barred against, in Manham. But that was the rules of his wrestling pit. But so I'm sorry, I was oversensitive. Anyway, back to the show here.
How it operates in such a fashion that there is a stand to be made. This is what I want to focus on. The stand being made.
Okay.
What type of position are you going to hold besides being a contributing factor to society by working and paying your taxes? Now,
is that what it requires? I believe that you can contribute to this society and not be able to work. For example, a handicapped person, and you might not pay taxes because you might even be a working class non-handicapped person, but you're below the level where you have to pay. You got 3 kids, make whatever the amount is. Boom, turns out you don't need to pay taxes. Maybe you're even eligible for public assistance. You don't have to work and pay taxes to be a contributing member of society.
for us to understand this aspect, one has to look out into the systems of development and how these operate in due fashion of a group or herd type like mentality. Now, there are dangers to be had here where certain groups are classified by the government of that country to be a terrorist or a dissident. Now, looking at where you came from and how you want to leave a bad predicament alone and move forward into a better scenario of a situation.
So this is great so far. Exactly, that's where the refugees, and for that matter, a lot of immigrants that couldn't get refugee status, they're still seeking refuge from a situation. You have to feel the situation you're in is pretty bad if you haul up your family and move to another country, rich or poor, either way.
What kind of motivation was there into what brought you to that conclusion? Meaning, are you part of that system and trying to hide and skirt from the bigger system? Or are you just an outright innocent victim? Now, these questions are vitally important to answer because they give a backdrop.
So I guess he's raising whether or not you're really moving to get into a better situation, or if, for example, you are on the wrong side of local law, you're a petty criminal or some sort of a criminal, or for that matter, well, I guess would have to be a criminal, and you're just trying to escape that to a country that's freer. And I doubt that that would be the United States with more people incarcerated per capita than anywhere else in the world. But
And paint the picture in a better perspective. So, for the differences to be had here is that you're leaving one set of political ideologies behind and moving into a new and different system of political ideologies. Now, the offset, of course, is one that can be seen that it is quite different and out of the ordinary. So one has to get used to the criteria of the basis of those political ideologies, of some type of selection process, whether it be from the host that are putting you up and making sure that everything goes according to plan while they're spewing propaganda and trying to teach you those set standards of that propaganda. Are you going to allow yourself to become a victim once again into that type of system of propaganda, of political ideologies? Now, what I'm looking at is a certain aspect of political ideologies that the government wants everybody to follow into, which is nationalism and as well as patriotism. Okay, so nationalism in of itself has its finer points to it, but taken out of context, it can be dangerous and less productive.
Totally, and I don't think that the government isn't even one thing. It's a whole group of people with different powers and overlapping powers and the ability to arrest each other and be at odds. And the checks and balances, not just within the federal government, which are sometimes iffy, but also the checks and balances between the state police. The FBI can arrest the state and local and do things on them. The state police can arrest a federal representative that resides and represents their district, and there's real checks and balances. So I don't think there is any one government attitude, and if there is, at least in America, it's not supposed to be nationalism. Yes to patriotism, for good or ill. I think that has been a thing that the government is trying to inspire, and in the tests and programs for people to become citizens, you'll see that kind of thing, and pride in the Constitution and all of that. And I think that you could call that patriotism, but not nationalism.
So we have to keep it in mind in the different avenues of approach. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so that's fine, Kenneth. And my sensitivity is I don't want people saying I'm picking on anybody. If I'm talking to you, then I'm giving you the time of day, and just like you're giving me the time of the day, it's all equal. I'm not being petty. I'm not saying, hey, you're got green skin, and that's funny. You use too little makeup, use too much. I don't do that petty stuff, and that people should appreciate that, and that's all that should be appreciated. And the concept I'm too hard on people, I will take that into account. I'm sensitive to that, but also it's obviously just a little trump card. Now, having said that, Kenneth, I made points you did not answer in here. These are null points, starting points. What did you say here about the culture war? I'm making a position about I think the culture war is stupid, but I'm admitting we're getting drug into it, and I have to take it serious. Okay, I say that's a tradition to have immigration, and that we need immigration both to keep our culture American, because there's got to be vegetables in vegetable soup, and we're supposed to bring those people in. Plus, I like the benefits. I like the new cultures and new holidays and new types of restaurants and new languages, and I want that. Plus, I'm from an American culture, the Bohemian American culture. We've been atheist for centuries, But hey, I'm supposed to cry that my American subculture is becoming more and more prominent and dominant to a certain degree. I don't want it to become like fascist in its domination. I don't want it to become nationalist in its domination. But, Cry Me a River used to get canceled for believing in raising the in having a minimum wealth guarantee even for workers or whatever communist type thing they'd accuse you of. Want public education to ramp it up. Oh, you're communist. You get canceled for ideas like that. For saying marijuana should be illegal. For being pro-gay marriage. People are judging cancel you for all these things, and that just is the way that it is in the culture. And you could complain about it. I complain about it, fine. But the whole idea that we've got to identify ourselves based on through the lens that there's just one America. Well, there isn't. There's all these subcultures. I appreciate all the subcultures. I'm not going to feel guilty if things like gay marriage now become part of the popular culture, things that always made sense to me. That it's not an invisible. There's been people fighting for that kind of stuff, just like there was people fighting for the abolition of slavery, centuries before slavery started to be abolished. And then after it started to be abolished, there was still slavery anyway, and there are people trying. That's just the way of the world. And how the culture goes, yeah, I hope it's a more open, smart, freer, well-balanced emotionally culture. But if it goes in another direction and I don't get what I want, that's also part of how it works. And other people have to face the same thing. And I'm tired of talking people down. Now, is this you? I don't know. Considering I made some fairly direct statements and you told me, and I'm like, what's the point? You don't allow comments on these videos, and you told me to go to these videos. This is at best a starting point, and you didn't make a strong position, or at least It wasn't clear. You made it could be this, it could be that, it could be that, which is great. I love that. But that's not exactly the bold reply to dig into the meat that you promised. Okay, so I would suggest you make a video specifically talking about something I'm talking about, or at very least add in here, are you anti-immigration? Are you trying to cut me down because of the ideas you didn't like, or is somehow you just think that that's what YouTube's about? I don't get it, Kenneth. We've been talking for many, many years now on many, many subjects. And you should be able to use my interaction with you to be more clear. To me, specifically. You should know how to talk to me, right? It's not any of the words you put, the wherefores and the withals. I love all of that. None of that is bothersome to me. And I don't mind if you go, hey, there's for a tat. And it's like, there's a balance. That's great. But you come across like you're objecting and trashing what you've heard in a video of mine. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And this is the answer because this is pretty neutral, right? You see what I'm saying? So make a more direct statement, I think, or try to pick out a thing that I actually brought up. And you don't have to disagree with it. You can just go, hey, here's this idea, and this is what it made me think of. In which case, don't come along like we're doing a battle bro thing, because that's not happening, right? It can happen. I admit I can be drawn in and enjoy that stuff very greatly. That's not what's happening between you and me. So, I didn't see a bunch of those videos. When I go to your video list and I see Piero in the title, pretty much with always insulting, Piero has amnesia kind of stuff, I didn't know that was going on. I'm not going to go watch those. You're bringing up a subject, you want my attention, you have it. You've always had it for free. I'm very free with my attention. So I encourage you to continue, but the critique has to do with what you said's fine. I neither disagree or agree per se in the sense that I don't know where they were going, but I agree in that, yeah, it is. There's a balance where that's what certain things remain to be seen. Other things we have seen, and that's what I'm talking about, is based on the history we have had, what we have seen, that I'm saying things like, we know, from my point of view, my argument, that the United States is dependent on immigration. If the immigrants ever dry up and don't want to come here, that's going to be the big problem for this country culturally. So, all right. A couple of comments I think I responded to. Alex Truss. Hey, Piero, why don't you talk to Vash? I would totally talk to Vash. I watch him all the time. I think, I'm not, people in that discussion area are generally trying to make a living and have a large number of people, and then they want to talk to other people like that. So I don't think that's in the cards. But I'm happy to talk to anybody that is maintaining and developing positions and opinions. The people that bug me the most are the ones that have always had no opinion. Then people start having opinions. Geez, that's a badly formed opinion, which is frustrating, but it's on the path to having well-formed opinions. And again, well-formed opinions aren't opinions that agree with mine. They're opinions that appeal, and that the structure of their appeal fit the person that's describing them. If in the end, I like vanilla ice cream and somebody else likes strawberry ice cream, if their position about why they would like the family to buy the 5 gallons of strawberry instead of vanilla, I understand. I don't have to agree, and I think we should get 5 gallons of vanilla. We don't have to agree on that. It just has to be well formed that if that person actually hates strawberry ice cream but is still saying we should buy the 5 gallon of strawberry, and based on, hey, maybe other people like strawberry, well, let's just do a survey and see who likes that. And I agree too. Like, if this guy likes chocolate and I like vanilla, but 8 out of 10 family members want the strawberry, I'm saying, you know what, we should get strawberry. I just want things honest. All right, cheers. I'm just going to cut and see if it's going to cut off the end on one of the services, because it did one time, but I'm not sure I need the end trail. So I'll just talk a little bit more like this, and then I'll go 3, 2, 1 to the end, and I'll know whether it made it to the end, because I'll go 3, 2,